Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. The other day I made a video on my top 5 United States champions. Honestly, to me, the Intercontinental Championship is always a little bit more special to me. Growing up as a kid, the Intercontinental Championship meant a lot more than it does today. I thought I would just make a list of my top 5 champions. I made my list here on paper, and 4 out of my 5 champions come from the era of 1987 to 1992. I think that honestly one of my favorite times with the new era of professional wrestling, where the championship was getting, passed around a little bit more. I think the Intercontinental Championship was really good from like 96 to 97, when you had Rocky Maivia, you had Triple H, you even had Mark Mero, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Definitely, Rock and Austin, Triple H and The Rock, definitely really started their feud at this time, and I really like that time period with those. But I think that when you think of Triple H, when you think of The Rock, when you think of Stone Cold Steve Austin, you think of them as being more, WWF World Heavyweight Champions or WWF Champions, whatever you want to call it at that point. So none of them made my list, but I just thought it was like an honorary mention, just putting over 96 and 97 as a real strong point for the Intercontinental Championship as well. My list goes down from number 5 to number 1. All 5 of these champions, I think, are really great times with the belt. I started off with number 5. Which would be the Honky Tonk Man, which, is sort of putting himself over as the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. He does, have the longest reign of Intercontinental Championship, one reign altogether, more than anybody else. Of course, he won the championship after WrestleMania 3, held it all the way into SummerSlam when, the Ultimate Warrior came down replacing Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and won the championship there in a matter of seconds. The Honky Tonk Man, he had big feuds against guys like Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He might not have had the biggest feuds on the card, but, when I started watching wrestling, it was really told to me that the Intercontinental Championship meant something, and when I would go back and I would watch older matches like WrestleMania 3, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat going up against Macho Man Randy Savage, they would really stress that this is the number 2 belt in the company. They might not be on the level of Hulk Hogan, but, this is a belt that people want, and there's people coming from all different ways. Honky Tonk Man on my list is the longest reigning champion of all time, number 5. Number 4 on my list might have had, he definitely has the shortest reign of anybody on this list. The Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. Of course, most people would know him from wrestling in World Class Championship Wrestling or in the NWA or in Japan. But Kerry Von Erich, at the latter point of his career, made a run with the WWF. When he came in, he in my mind was the best Von Erich. I will admit that I haven't seen the most Von Erichs out of everybody in my thing, but I don't know, something about me gravitated towards the Texas Tornado. I've told this story before, but when I was a kid and I would go over to my buddy Tommy's house, he had all the wrestling buddies, and we used to have wrestling matches where we were a tag team, and I would wrestle as Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. He would wrestle as the British Bulldog, and we were called the British Texans. We marked out a lot when you go back and you watch SummerSlam 1991. These guys teamed together with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and we thought that they honestly were watching our tapes of us wrestling back in the day and thought to put these guys together. But the Texas Tornado, he had a short feud with Mr. Perfect where he beat Mr. Perfect for the championship, and then, of course, Perfect would win it back after only 84 days. But when I think of the classic WWF magazine covers, I really think of the Kerry Von Erich one of him holding the belt and pointing at it like, that's right, I won the championship. I'm the one who ended Mr. Perfect's undefeated streak. But that's one of the ones that I really, really hold dear. And that's another thing when it comes to Intercontinental Championship. When you think about, WWE magazine, when it was in production those last few years, it would be like John Cena's on the cover, CM Punk's on the cover, Randy Orton's on the cover, Undertaker's on the cover, and then it would just start over again. Same guy, bam, bam, bam. Most guys would get 2 or 3 covers within a year. If you go back to this era of like 87 and 92, you would see guys like Bret the Hitman Hart. You would see the Honky Tonk Man. The Intercontinental Championship guy owned that cover. month after month after month. They love putting those mid-card guys on there, and those are why those magazines are so true to some people from back in the day. Really, really good stuff. Of course, Kerry Von Erich wouldn't have a great ending to his career. Maybe it was drugs. Maybe it was just not living up to what everybody thought he was going to do once his brother had died. Of course, he beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. He only held the title for a matter of days before dropping the title back to Flair. And a lot of people have put that over as just basically trying to make money off of the Von Erich's, bad situation with the oldest brother dying over in Japan, and saying that he had to win one for the Gipper. A lot like the Rey Mysterio deal. But I don't know, this guy was great, and there's lots of things to learn about him. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos about world-class championship wrestling in the next couple of days, because we're going to be going to the former site of the Sportatorium in Dallas. So, number 2 on my list, Texas Tornado. Number 3 on my list would be the only guy from, I guess you can say, the modern era, even though he's not wrestling anymore, and that would be Rob Van Dam. Of course, Van Dam would come over during the invasion, and, he would have a run going after the championship of the company. He ended up not winning it. You can go back and look and really tell that in 2001, RVD should have won the championship, and maybe it was Triple H or, somebody with power at that time basically saying, you can't put the title on this guy because he's an ECW guy. But, definitely of everybody that was on, Team WCW or Team Alliance, whatever you want to call them, Rob Van Dam was more over than anybody. And I know when you look at the Alliance, they ended up at the end of the day putting, Kurt Angle on the team. They ended up putting Stone Cold Steve Austin on the team. But in the end, RVD was the most over guy there. And once he started, ringing up Intercontinental Championships, I can't remember if he won the belt 4, 5, 6, 7 times, however many times it is. They would sort of turn this into, it wasn't the hardcore title or, it wasn't the extreme title, but he started wrestling in a lot of high impact, Intercontinental Championship ladder matches and things like that. And I thought it really raised the bar and it set a thing to it. I thought of everybody over the modern era. Rey Mysterio was a great Intercontinental Champion. Chris Jericho was a good Intercontinental Champion. But RVD, to me, honestly, was the one guy that was in the mid-card that you knew that definitely could take over the main event if he ever got that chance. And one thing or another always held him down. Of course, he would win the WWE Championship and the ECW Championship, and I guess that'd be 2006, building up the ECW One Night Stand, and then as champion got pulled over smoking pot with him and Sabu cruising down the road. I think it was in Ohio, and the video got released to TMZ, and I don't think WWE liked the fact that their champion got a ticket for smoking pot, and then even sort of made a joke about being the world champ to the cop, which was on the tape released to TMZ, and he's came back, he's had his time, he's always really popular, but he's never really got pushed to the limit of where he should have been. Rob Van Dam on the list, number 3. Number 2 on the list, I always screw myself up because I always do my lists wrong. Bret the Hitman Hart. I believe Bret Hart had 2 runs with the Intercontinental Championship. He would beat Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam 1991 in one of my favorite matches of all time. Then he would lose it a year later. No, he would lose it on the way to there because they would do the thing at WrestleMania. I forgot about that part of the run. He would lose the belt to the Mountie. The Mountie would lose the belt to Roddy Piper, I believe, at the Royal Rumble. And that would set up the WrestleMania match because I knew he wasn't champion for a whole year. And of course, then Bret Hart would have the great WrestleMania match against Roddy Piper. I believe it's Roddy Piper's only loss on a WrestleMania as well. Now, I guess unless you count WrestleMania 25 with the returning Legends match against Chris Jericho, but I don't really even think of that as being Roddy Piper. And it's Roddy Piper, but it's not. It doesn't go with that part of the record. But Piper would lose to Bret, and they would have the whole angle about them being cousins and things like that. And besides for the fact that I still think he's number 2 on my list, he doesn't beat number 1. It just shows you how great of an Intercontinental Champion Bret Hart was. Another great match at WrestleMania. Then, of course, he would pack Wembley Stadium for the match against the Bulldog. Wrestle a great match against the guy that really wasn't at his best that day. That was all Bret having that match, and you can really tell by watching it. The Bulldog was just there, being told what to do and being led through spots and things like that. But Bret would he'd get the did he lose the belt to the Bulldog and then he got out of there? Because I don't think he got the belt back after that. But, just Bret Hart, the sunglasses, him just getting over as a singles guy with Jim the Anvil Neidhart taking over, doing announcing. And then, of course, he would, be a tag team with Owen Hart with the New Foundation after that. But Bret was able to reestablish himself. People have said that, one of the reasons why he was so, well booked was he was one of the most fan favorite people, getting lots of fan mail to actually sent to the WWF studios, especially from women, people thinking that he was the real deal. But Bret, number 2 on my list. And then number 1 is, honestly, in my mind, one of the best wrestlers of all time. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. He had time stolen from him with his back injury, where he retired from wrestling, and then he would return and wrestle again, of course, for WCW, riding out his last days, even with the West Texas Rednecks, and then, coming back in 2002 and having a good little run in WWF before. I don't really even think I ever know the reason why he was released. And of course, everybody knows about the downfall of Kurt. I believe he passed away from an overdose. I believe it was in Puerto Rico when he was wrestling there for the Colognes. And it's sad. I mean, Mr. Perfect, easily one of the best wrestlers of all time. Some people have said that, his retirement was sort of taking advantage of the Lloyds of London thing. Maybe he wasn't as hurt as people, thought he was, but he had a good situation where he said that he couldn't wrestle because of his back, and he had bought that insurance, and the insurance had to pay him out. And he was making more money wrestling than he was doing anything else. And, the WWF planned on bringing him back for that, I believe it was a Survivor Series match. And then he ended up not being able to do it. And I can't remember if he wrestled for WWF before he ended up leaving and going to WCW or not. But I remember it being a big deal when he returned. And of course, he came into WCW and he was going to be a horseman. And it ended up turning on the horseman in the cage, slamming the steel cage door into Ric Flair's head. And I still don't know how they do that, because that door really looks like it slams right off of Ric Flair's head. And it just, brutality in the ring right there. But Mr. Perfect, of course, would win the Intercontinental Championship. He won it in a tournament. I believe it was held on Superstars. And he was, the undefeated, part of Bobby Heenan's Heenan family. He would lose the belt to the Tornado. He would get the belt back from the Tornado and lose it to Bret in one of the best matches I've ever seen at SummerSlam 1991. So Mr. Perfect is the guy that brings the most prestige to the championship. Of course, he would do the towel gimmick where he would throw the towel over his head and he'd catch it one-handed. And then when he was with Heenan, he'd throw it and then Heenan would catch it. And then he would do the gum spit and slap it into the crowd. I'm sure somebody out there has this gum in their wrestling collection that Mr. Perfect spit out at some Superstars taping back in the day. But that's my list. Honky Tonk Man, Texas Tornado, Rob Van Dam, Bret Hart, and Mr. Perfect. If you don't agree, or if you just want to add into the fun, make sure you make a video of your own. Can't do video responses anymore. They killed that off a few years ago. But make sure you tweet it to me, and retweet can't hurt, and we'll pass it around. We'll see how many of these videos we can get going. Peace out, everybody.